Okay, we officially start today's daily. Now, the topic for today is a bit different. I'm going to go with video games in general, but not just any video of the games. We're going to be doing the specific video games that I wish I could create. Now, you're probably thinking, what in tarnation does that mean? Por favor. Well, basically, in the past, well, I still want to, essentially. I would love to create games. Now, I have zero programming skill and not good enough in general to really do that unless I divide my heart and soul into it, or put my heart and soul into it and work nonstop, which I no. Yeah. So because of that, I don't really think I'm ever going to be doing games or creating games. As I said, I would love to, but hey. But something that I was always saying that I would always take the opportunity if it ever came to me would be if whatever the heck it's called. If I ever got in like touch with a company of some sort, like a gaming company, any gaming company. I would give them, an idea, and then I'd want to work with them throughout the entire thing, telling them, I would work with the marketing team, like who to market, how to market, things like that, like videos. I'd like watch all the things that we come up with to see if I like them or not, to see if they'd work in general, so on and so forth. I'd work with like each individual team throughout the entire project, just having them ask me like, "Do you want this to look like this, blah blah blah," or "I think this should look like this, and this," if they have their own idea for it. Um, in general, I've always just really enjoyed coming up with ideas for games, and like I've always just wished that I could actually create them into fruition. Um, to me personally, that would be like a dream come true. I don't really think it's going to happen, but if it ever did, if a company ever saw that like I have game ideas and so on and so forth, and they were like willing to go out on a risk, I would not hesitate to take that opportunity. I'd even be in like some cases willing to give small amounts because games are a lot to make. I was gonna say like give some of like the money to potentially make it, but at the same time, games are like I don't know. Like you can look at the most expensive game ever, which was Destiny 1 and 2, but this was like marketing, this was everything for the entire project. They spent like a couple $1 million to pay everyone, to have the marketing for each thing, to have like constant developers working on it basically, and just so on and so forth. Um that was like I think that is like the most expensive games is Destiny 1 and 2. I could be incorrect about that, but yeah. And so on and so forth, and I do not have millions of dollars. I do not have that. I have thousands, but not many thousands. Like in retrospect, like even like a regular game is still going to take several thousand, 100,000, much more. And I do not have that, so I'd only be able to give a very small portion of it in general, but like at the same time I'd be like, I'm willing to give this if the game does go successful, if I can one get the majority of this back. And by majority I don't mean like my paychecks, because the main things that I would want from making these games is I would want whatever the heck it is called. I want royalties off of the game, obviously. That way I'm making some sort of a profit and not just a set amount. Now, obviously, I wouldn't make any money until after the game is published, and so on and so forth. So upon like signing the contract with me, you'd have to promise me basically that it would be published. I guess in essence that could go downhill in some other ways, but still. Um, but basically that's just how I've always just like been excited. Like I would love to take the opportunity if it ever arose to create a video game. And I know that there's like a lot of other people out there too. And even whenever I talk about it with my friends, they always say, you are like one of millions, sir. Like, everybody thinks that they have a game idea. Everybody that plays games is like, this would be great, a game idea, and blah, blah, blah. And I always go, yeah, I understand, but... And I will agree that there are others that, like, go to my extents of just, like, how in detail they get with part of the game. But... at the same time, I truly, yet again, I'm just going to sound like everyone else, but still, I truly just think that it would go pretty well, if I do say so myself, but I can't promise anything. Now, would I like it to be very successful? Yes, obviously. Did they use potions or something? Oh no, she just have a regen bead. Huh. But yeah, that's just kind of how I would like things to go. So because of this, I'm going to get a little bit in detail of how I personally would really like to, you know, come up with games. Such as, there are a few games, like I have some main game ideas, some side game ideas, some meh ones, and so on and so forth. But I'm going to be focusing on, like, the main one of right now that I have, which is okay, but nothing to... I think it would do very well because of the current what the heck? The current way that people are trying to play games. It has been optimized to meet the community in the sense of it does have a battle royale game mode in it. Its main function is not battle royale, but that's just one of the things that it has. And so on and so forth. Now, one of the bad things, though, that I'm just going to say this now, I'm very bad at coming up with game ideas when it comes to names. I'm just so very bad at that. Usually my names for games or specific things in the games are very simplistic. They generally just kind of scratch the surface. Of like, yeah, they're not that in depth. So first off, as I was saying, the main one that I've always been thinking of more recently. I'm also going to describe these games through the only way I can really know how, which is by describing other games and like functions and so on and so forth. And by that I mean, like, to describe this game, I'm going to say it's like a whole lot of Tom Clancy games. Because that essentially is honestly what it is, definitely a lot like. In the sense of the main game itself. The main game itself keeps track of a city. And it's kind of like the Division of sense where you're in a city You're just trying to upgrade yourself, get stronger, get better gear, get better abilities, and so on and so forth. But the abilities are kind of like set in stone in more of like a class system-esque way, to where you pick a class and then that class will have its set abilities, and that's just the way it'll work. Okay, so basically the main lore of the game itself. The reason I'm doing it is, as I said, just because I kind of just want to talk about the idea and so on and so forth, and just kind of hope for the best. But you're in this city. So the world has gone through some technological advances, so it is a sci-fi futuristic game. I really, truly hate Gnosis is slow. Wither is just broken. Besides that, he's honestly okay, but Wither is just broken. So, shoot. As I was saying, you're in a technologically advanced city. There was one place in the world where all like the greatest minds basically decided to get together to make a super base in forms of both like military, environmental, everything is just better in this area. It was purely for an experiment's purpose. The people that live there are all part of the experiment, including. They are all well aware that they are part of the experiment, and therefore fully accept this fact and realize that their lives aren't like forfeit or anything like that, but at the same time they do realize that like they're not the #1 priority, but they are a priority, meaning that like the city is going to help them if it can, but the main thing is that this is an experiment to test how well the world could handle this technology and so on and so forth. Basically everyone in the world just agreed to this. But then it also became the world's biggest hotspot when it comes to terror, when it comes to just about anything. Everyone's just trying to mess with this place. They want to take the technology that this place has. They want to evolve like this place is. It's basically just that the world got really... I wasn't even thinking. The world gets really greedy and wants to take this place's equipment, essentially. Wants to take this place's like stuff, and then you are basically a soldier that is going to defend it. So you are actually going to be like born and raised in the city, and then joined the military force specifically for the city and the city alone. The city then goes under a full siege from multiple different organizations at once. So apparently there was one organization that planned a much bigger attack. Because the attack actually did go through, it caused all these other organizations to then realize that this is not just an opportunity for that one group, this is an opportunity for everybody. Oh, come on. And because of that, all the other groups took the same opportunity that this one arose. Now, I'm not going to say the opportunity because it is a major lore point of like why the entire event itself started. So just saying that it would be a bit too much. And because of that, now the like all these different gangs and so on and so forth, and all these different bad people are now just in the city, basically in control, while the citizens are suffering, and all these different like military forces around the world are essentially just trying to like trying to help, but they're not exactly helping too much, especially because some of them are going to have ulterior motives. Like every single state's going to have ulterior motives. So not only are you a military person against like the terrorists and just the gangs and just criminals that are in the area, you're also against all the different militaries. Because they're trying to like mess with the technology themselves. Now, yes, they agreed to like the contract or agreement to make the city in the first place and to not interfere, but now that the city's in shambles, they could take basically whatever they want and no one would even realize. So because of that, the militaries are taking this opportunity to start taking. Now you're probably thinking, why don't the militaries already have it when they're the ones that agreed to this in the first place? Well, because as I said, this place was to test if the world could handle it. Most of the militaries, even though yes they agreed to having their tech being there and having their tech evolved, they themselves won't have access to a whole lot. So yeah, they're trying to get the secrets as well. Now, yes, like in the actual like main campaign, you are going to like befriend some of these people, be betrayed by them, so on and so forth. But that's just kind of what you would expect. Now you're in the one main city. It essentially is the size of like just a slightly larger than average city. It's not huge. It's not like tiny either, though. It is essentially a city. So yeah, now you're being kind of invaded upon. All the organizations are blah 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 doing their own thing, and then you're just like you're using the technology of this place to better your own like search and everything as well, and just trying to help people. And that's basically what main things that happen. You do end up making like your own main base in the like you basically you take over one of the buildings and say and I'm just like, this one's mine now. This is the main base of operations that we are going to have, and beta bada boonga. And that's basically just what happens in the place. And then after that, you're going to move on and start like defending the place. You're going to be doing missions. The missions will unlock new abilities, new class systems, so on and so forth, and it'll unlock upgrades for your base and just things in this kind of direction. That's just, you know, what kind of happens. So as I said, it's kind of like the Division in the sense that you make your own home base and then you just kind of defend it, and like you evolve it the longer the game goes on and things along that line. But it is also like separate in its own ways as well, because I said there is a class system. The class system is a universal system throughout the entire game. I'll kind of explain that in a moment. And then there are the other ways that you can play the game as well. Now, there is the campaign, but then there are 3 other game modes. There is the, what I call Call of Duty game mode, where the main objective is get the hell in there, shoot the hell out of everything. So Call of Duty. The Rainbow Six Siege game mode, which is kind of like a Spec Ops thing, where you're basically, it's like teams of 5 against each other in like a small area. It can be like a house or like any area that's in like the game. Each map that they can actually, there will be unique maps, but the maps won't be like full-on cities or anything. As I was saying earlier, they will just be like a single building in the base city that you spawn in, like the main city that's in the campaign. That's all it will really be. And then, so like some of these places you can already be a little used to or may have never seen ever. Others, you know, like you, as I said, you might not have ever seen. And basically it's kind of similar in the sense of there's like different objectives based off of whatever the heck it is. There's one where you're going to have to, you're actually going to be like the terrorists invading the defenders, where you're going to be doing exactly that, where there's going to be a bomb in like the center of the building and the defenders need to just guard it with their lives, but then the terrorist objective is to get the heck in there and set off the bomb. And then that will actually like blow up the entire thing, and then that will cause the terrorists to win that fight. I don't really want to call them terrorists because like in this specific game mode they really aren't. It's more of like just attackers versus defenders. Sure, I don't care. No. And that's just kind of the way the cookie's gonna crumble, I guess. For that, and then there's one where you have to like secure the information. There's a whole lot of different game modes for what you could potentially do inside whatever map you're going to be, which is, as I said, just going to be a part of the main map. Then there are, as I said, there's the Call of Duty game mode, which is actually going to have like slightly different maps besides just the main. It will like revolve mostly in the big city. It can have like sewers, so on and so forth, and yeah. Brr. And that's just how that's going to work in like the main shoot 'em up area. But as I said, there are like the class systems, and then the class system when it comes to the Rainbow Six Siege game mode will be split into 3 groups, which will be neutral, attacker, defender. Attackers obviously can pick from the attacker one, defenders can pick from the defender one, and neutral can be picked by either. But if you pick a neutral, then it will show both teams that you have picked this person, meaning if you pick one before like the very possible last second, to the enemy team, they will know exactly what class you are. So yeah. And because of that, it can be like there's some things, there's a lot of counterplay to it, and so on and so forth. Some of the things that will be similar to what you might see in Rainbow Six Siege, where there's going to be one guy, such as I don't remember what his name is in Rainbow Six Siege, but there's a guy that has a heartbeat monitor. Now he actually pulls out a heartbeat monitor and like looks in a direction, and then he can see where the heartbeat is. But in this, it's going to be a little bit different, such as he will have an attachment of a heartbeat monitor on his primary weapon, which you'll have a primary and a secondary, and that's it. And it will he'll be able to like hold it open, and it'll make like a blinking sound whenever it scans in the area in front of him, and he'll just know the general location of where they are. But he can also close it, and it won't make the noise. Now, the reason that will make that noise is it will add a counterplay to the attackers, because that's like one that's an exclusive defender, where they'll be able to hear the bleep and know, okay, they're nearby, something like that. They know our location, blah, 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 blah. Because it'll make that bleeping sound whether it like sees a heartbeat or not, but it'll make a much louder bleeping sound if it does actually see a heartbeat. So like if you are good enough to hear the difference between the 2 beeps, then you'll know if they've actually seen you or if they have no idea where you are and he was just checking. And then you'll like, and that's what that specific class is. There's going to be another one that actually is kind of like the Call of Duty from a little bit ago, where double tapping X will cause you to jet in a specific direction that you have chosen. That will be the only class that's like that, and that will be it will be a neutral class where you will have like your augment on your body will be Like a regular X will cause you to jump, but if you double tap X, then it will cause you to um, dash. Now, if you tap X and then tap it again while mid-air, then you will dash upward. But if you're like running forward and really rapidly double tap X, then you'll dash forward. You can dash to right, left, backwards, so on and so forth. As I said, it's kind of like the Call of Duty from like 2 years ago, where like that was the main thing, is how you counterplayed people is by dashing around. But yeah, it's not exactly like that. It's like has its own spin on it. And then like an attacker class would be the C4 guy. Now, a lot of the classes actually will have their entire left hand completely removed and be replaced with like a robotic hand. Even like the main character in like the story mode has this, where he does not have a left hand. It is just robotic. And that's like another one of the advancements, is that they were trying to replace body parts of people, like their military primarily, of the city, to see how they would react to that, if it would function properly, so on and so forth. Yet again, just trying to be as technologically advanced as possible. So yeah, like his entire left hand is just like it's a robotic hand, and then it will be holding actual things of like C4, where you will be able to like not eject them, but you'll be able to like it'll have an animation where your arm will open up and slide a C4 into your actual hand, where then you'll be able to place it on a wall. You will not be able to throw it in this specific game mode, which is the Rainbow Six Siege one, where you'll just have to place it on a wall and then it can blow up that section of the wall. Kind of like Thermite, but not as big. From Rainbow Six Siege, Thermite. And then that will be like an attacking class. And then there are several, and I mean several. I have several classes for each: neutral, defending, and attacking. And then, as I said, that the classes, not only that, but they change depending on what mode you're in. Only slightly. They still are basically the same. But if you go into the shoot 'em up one, because they're actually the exact same as the Rainbow Six Siege one as they are in the campaign. In essence, okay, not the exact same, but mostly the same. Where that one will be like, if you are in the campaign and you happen to have the class on that makes you the Thermite version, where you place the C4, you'll be able to do exactly that. But in the campaign, you'll be able to be several classes at the same time. Sort of, but they can't like mess with each other. I can explain that in a moment. Such as classes are defined in 3 different ways: passively, actively, or equipment. Such as if it's equipment, it will change your gun in some sort of way, shape, or form, such as I was just talking about with Heartbeat. He will have a heartbeat monitor on his gun. If you have that class active, it will only affect your gun and it would not matter. Then you can have one of each of these active. Such as you will also have an active. That would be the Thermite version, as I was just saying, where he would pull out a C4, because you'll actually need to actively hit a button for him to pull out the C4. And then there is the passive, which is just something that you can do all the time. You don't need to hit a button for, which would be exactly what I was talking about with the jet boosting guy, which is the neutral one, where you'd be able to just double tap X. You don't need to hit, well, yes, you need to hit X for it, but it's not like you need to hit a separate button to activate the ability like you would need to activate the C4 guys. Something like that. And so on and so forth, and you'd be able to be like, you can be 3 different classes at once, even if you could potentially just pick 3 passive classes to be, because they won't intervene with each other, but you can only pick one of each, and you can only have like one of each type of like active, such as putting on the equipment, such as you can't have too many attachments on your guns at once, and you also can't have like 2 things activate off the same button, because there will always be like a class button that will activate. That'll be like a universal class button. And then the last game mode is battle, like the battle royale game mode, and this one is very unique in its own sense, such as 1, it has all the same classes as every other game mode. Let me quickly go back to, as I said, the Call of Duty game mode, where it's basically just like Call of Duty matches where you're just trying to kill each other and get points, and that'll just be held in like random parts of the city type deal, but it'll be like walled off so that you can't explore. will be like each of the maps, and so on and so forth. And yeah, and then like this, I said, this will have the same classes. Now, some classes in this, as I was just talking about with the C4 guy, if you have like if you are the C4 person, your class, you will be able to now throw the C4. That way it's actually useful, because what use is going to be placing a C4 to blow up a wall in this game mode? Oh, and mostly everything is destructible, meaning like you can blow up a full-on building even in like any game mode except for the campaign, which you will be able to destroy quite a bit of things as well in the campaign. So you'll actually be able to throw the C4 at people and remote detonate it, causing them to blow up like immediately, instead of having to place it somewhere and wait for someone to walk by it. Or just place it somewhere. You could potentially do this. You could place it somewhere, blow up like a hole in the wall. That way you can shoot out the hole, because that hole will never be repaired. And so on and so forth. Then, as I was saying, there is the Battle Royale game mode, where it is slightly different, such as it'll be the only one where you don't where you do like drop in, but you drop in like a different way. You don't pull out a parachute. You just kind of like land, but really weirdly, such as like you'll use some sort of advanced technology type thing to survive it. That will be in like your boots of some sort. Because of this, it will also like reduce fall damage further on, like no matter what class you are, to an extent. Okay, that is honestly like the one thing that I haven't fully figured out, is how you're going to land, because that parachute would be stupid. I was thinking at one point maybe you can just spawn in, but then I think that would also be kind of dumb. And maybe a potentially unfair to some, especially if you spawn in like right next to someone. So you definitely need to jump off in some way, shape, or form, but I want there to be fall damage because of specific functions in the game. So because of that, I don't fully know how I'm going to have you land. But after you do land, there are stations throughout the entire city called upgrade stations, and that is how you will get your classes. When you first spawn, you will not have a class. It is not like Realm Royale where you spawn in with a specific class in mind. You will spawn in equal to everyone else. Now, you're capable of collecting your weapons, but then you're also capable of dismantling weapons that you don't want. From dismantling them, you will get something called spare parts. These spare parts, you can walk over to a specific station, which is basically a forge in Realm Royale. I did come up with this before Realm Royale, by the way, came out. But it won't be as big and as magical as that. It'll just be like kind of like a station in a wall that is just going to be scattered throughout the entire map, the entire city. And then you'll be able to walk up to one, talk to it, and then sacrifice your spare parts to upgrade your body in some way, shape, or form, such as you will get a class system. And this will be the same way as like the Call of Duty game mode, where you will be able to, like, if you have the C4 person, you'll be able to throw the C4. If you can pick any class in this, you can pick the heartbeat person, but that's going to be exactly the way it is, except for the heartbeat monitor will have an increased range and not as loud of a noise. And then you could also potentially pick the passive person where you're jetting around, and that will be the exact same. That will not be changed whatsoever. There will be some classes that are changed like entirely, where the main basis of it is the same, but there are also many differences that way to make it interesting in this. And then you also get spare parts from killing other people. You cannot pick up their class system. So if you kill someone that had a class, you cannot pick it up, but you will get bonus spare parts for how many classes that they had active, because you can also have 3 classes active in that mode as well. And then the big thing that's different about this Battle Royale is usually all the other ones are a large map. Even Fortnite is like a pretty large map with several cities scattered throughout it. This is one small map that is one city. The base city that you spawn in is the map for every single game mode until like for future DLC, where they will expand on the city itself. Such as like when you first spawn in the first campaign, you have to pick your house in the entire city, and then you'll do missions throughout the entire place, and so on and so forth. But in this, once you land, you can travel throughout the entire city. There's a sewers, there's multiple levels. You can get in the cars that will be scattered throughout. Some buildings will have like helicopters on them. There will be boats where you'll be able to travel through like the actual sewer passages, and you'll also be able to travel on the water that is on the land, like throughout the city as well. There will be 4 very tall buildings that couldn't straight up topple, and then there's one skyscraper in the city. You'll be able to, literally everything in the Battle Royale is destructible. You can blow a hole through the ground and get in the sewer. You can straight up, if you have the C4 class, you can throw C4 on the bottom of a building, blow that up, and literally collapse the building. If someone's on the top of it and you collapse the building, they will probably either take major damage or die. Now, there is some problem to the class system, such as the C4. You do not have infinite C4. Any class that has an active, such as the C4, as I was saying earlier, where you actually need to actively hit a button to activate it, you will run out of C4 eventually. So you will need to walk back over to any of the upgrade stations throughout the entire map, and you'll need to sacrifice a much smaller amount of spare parts to do a full reload, such as it will give you, it will refill all of your classes if they need refilled in any way. Or you can individually reload, but as I said, you can only have one active anyway, so really only a full reload will really be needed, unless I go into more detail, such as earlier I was talking about how the passive of the neutral class, where you can jet around. I don't really know if that's going to go off of fuel yet. If we do make it go off of fuel, then you will need to reload that as well, and you will not be able to get the fuel any other way except for the upgrade station, and so on and so forth. But it will also be a bit more like PUBG, where once you pick up a gun, you also need to pick up the attachments for the gun, and then you'll be able to use them from there on out. And you will be able to straight up flatten the skyscraper. But the entire map will be aware of this. Meaning if you go to the skyscraper and you upgrade your equipment, and your entire team decides to grab the C4 person, and then you just keep throwing C4, blowing up the building, and then until eventually it starts to topple, it will warn the entire map the skyscraper is falling, or it'll just warn. When it comes to buildings, the only people in the immediate area will be aware that this building is toppling, and then it will also show up on their map in a red area that this specific area, it has a building that's toppling. Don't be in the radius or else you will be damaged. And it will show on the map what the radius is. It'll warn the entire map that the skyscraper is falling or the tall building is falling, and then it will put a area in the map of the direction that it's falling, the AoE that it's going to have, the AoE of the debris that's going to have, and it'll be like, hey, if you're in the red area, you're going to die. If you're in the yellow area, you might die, but you have a high chance of survival. Just get behind something. If you're in the blue area, which is going to be like the farthest circle where the debris will just hit you, you're going to take very little damage, but you're going to be right outside the debris. And then after that'll happen, it'll be like a map effect where it'll just fill that entire area with dust. And like you will not be able to see anyone until they're right in front of your face. So it'll cause a cool effect. Now I kind of also want to add like other special effects, such as you could go into like a winter area where you'll be able to hear the snow beneath someone's feet. And like there are potential blizzards. Then there could also be like rain that could happen, so on and so forth, and just fog in general, and even something like a hot summer's day where it'll just cause something else, where it will actually have like elements to it. And that is the bare basics of the game that I have personally thought of. I honestly, I don't know if any of you guys are going to agree, but I personally find it to be Very cool. I would love to see it come into actual fruition. I just need a game company to actually trust me enough to say, here is my idea. Please follow these steps. And I think, like we could definitely make a game here. So, thank you all very much for watching this Odd Daily. And I'm going to bid you all adieu. Goodbye.